Have you ever heard of someone being rejected before they were even born? Sounds impossible, right? But that's exactly the reality of Esau's story, one of the most puzzling characters in the Bible. Before his first cry, God had already declared that the older would serve the younger. Wait, what? Why would God make such a drastic decision? Buckle up, because what you're about to uncover might challenge everything you believe about destiny, choices, and God's role in our lives. This isn't just a story about two brothers at odds. It's about decisions that altered the course of history, about how our choices can echo for generations. Have you ever thought that something seemingly insignificant, like a meal, could shape someone's entire destiny? Well, that's exactly what happened with Esau. He gave up something extraordinary for a fleeting moment of satisfaction. Sound familiar? Maybe in your own life or in someone else's? And here's the kicker. This isn't just some ancient story. It's still a mirror for the decisions we face every single day. After all, how often do we find ourselves torn between what we want right now and what truly matters in the long run? But don't get it twisted. This story isn't just about mistakes. It holds a surprising lesson of redemption. Stick with me till the end, and I promise you'll walk away with a fresh perspective on God, on yourself, and on the ripple effect of your choices. From the very beginning, Rebecca's story teaches us an incredible lesson about God's power and the mysteries of life. Picture this: an ordinary woman suddenly receiving a divine revelation so powerful it would shape the destiny of entire nations. That's exactly what happened when God revealed that two nations were growing inside her womb. This wasn't just news about her pregnancy. It was a glimpse into a future full of conflict and challenges. Esau and Jacob, even before they were born, carried the marks of two opposing destinies. One would be strong and wild, while the other would be calm and strategic. Can you imagine the weight of that on a mother? Even as the two brothers grew in Rebecca's womb, there were signs of an internal struggle. The Bible tells us they jostled within her. Ever stop to think about the symbolism there? From the very start, their differences weren't just about who they were, they hinted at the challenges they'd face later on. God, in His infinite wisdom, showed that it's not always the strongest who prevail. Often victory lies in strategic planning and alignment with divine purpose. Esau was the kind of person a lot of folks admire today. Strong, practical, a man of action. He might have been the go-getter of his time, always out hunting, exploring, and living life to the fullest. Jacob, on the other hand, was more reflective, the type to think things through before making a move. In today's world, he'd probably be the strategist, the one who values preparation over impulsivity. Notice how these traits already point to the importance of balance between action and planning, something God clearly emphasized. Their relationship also raises a question that's super relevant even now. How often do we define people by their personalities early on? Esau, with his strength, seemed like the obvious choice to lead. But God, who sees the heart and the purpose, knew his plan was bigger than appearances or physical abilities. It makes you think, how often do we judge or get judged by superficial standards without considering the true potential God has placed within us? Then there's the birth itself, a pivotal moment in history. Esau, the firstborn, came out rugged and hairy, traits symbolizing his earthy, physical nature. Jacob, meanwhile, was gripping his brother's heel, a move that foreshadowed his determination and drive to overcome challenges. That tiny detail alone shows us how even the smallest moments can carry big lessons about perseverance and faith. And what about God's choice? By blessing Jacob, He reminds us that His plans often look very different from ours. It pushes us to trust His vision over our own expectations. God didn't choose Jacob because he was perfect. He chose him because Jacob aligned with the bigger plan. Think about that. How often do we measure our worth by human standards, when what truly matters is how we fit into God's purpose? But don't think the story ends here. It's just getting started. What happens when these differences become more obvious and conflicts start bubbling up? Esau and Jacob's relationship is living proof that life's paths aren't always smooth, but they always hold deep lessons. Stick with me, And let's dive into how the next chapter of this story reveals even more about choices and their consequences. Picture this. You're starving, your stomach's growling, and suddenly someone offers you exactly what you've been craving. Sounds impossible to resist, right? That's exactly what happened to Esau. In a moment of impulsiveness, he gave up something incredibly valuable, his birthright, for nothing more than a bowl of lentil stew. Now think about it for a second. How often do we trade something precious in our lives for spur-of-the-moment decisions? Through this story, God teaches us the importance of holding on to what really matters, even when faced with the most tempting urges. The birthright wasn't just a title, it was a spiritual and material privilege. It meant leading the family, inheriting blessings, and most importantly, being part of God's divine plan. By giving it up, Esau showed his focus was all about the here and now, on immediate gratification. It's kind of like blowing your entire paycheck on things you don't need, and forgetting to save for the future. Jacob, on the other hand, with his sharp strategic mindset, knew exactly what he was doing. He saw beyond the moment and acted with foresight, even though some might see it as opportunistic. This episode makes us pause and think about how we handle our own choices. Have you ever realized how many golden opportunities you've let slip because you couldn't see their true value? Maybe it's putting off that course that could take your career to the next level, or neglecting your time with God because you're too caught up in work. The Bible reminds us through Jacob and Esau's story that every decision we make carries eternal weight, even the ones that seem trivial in the moment. Jacob understood the worth of the birthright, but what's truly striking is how carefully he planned his approach. He waited for just the right moment, proving that strategy is just as crucial as intention. And here's a key takeaway. It's not enough to simply want something. You need the discipline and planning to make it happen. Maybe you've got a dream right now, but you're lacking that extra push to act wisely. How about starting with baby steps? Read up on the subject, pray for God's guidance, and watch how the plan begins to unfold. Esau's behavior, though, serves as a warning. It reminds us how impulsiveness can pull us away from our greatest blessings. Acting without thinking puts us at risk of losing what God has prepared for us. Just like Esau, we often prioritize short-term pleasure over what truly matters. But here's a practical tip. Before making a big decision, hit pause. Ask yourself, will this bring me closer to or further from God's plan for my life? At the same time, we can't ignore the ethical implications of Jacob's actions. While his strategy was sharp, he took advantage of his brother's vulnerability. This reminds us that everything we do should align with God's principles. Planning is essential, but it should never come at the cost of integrity or compassion. And so, this seemingly simple trade set off a chain reaction of events that changed their lives forever. Esau's choice and Jacob's strategy paved the way for greater conflicts, but also for deeper lessons about God's ways. Now let's dive into the complicated family dynamics and explore how parental favoritism shaped the destiny of these two brothers even further. At home, the differences between Esau and Jacob weren't just noticeable. They were magnified by their parents' favoritism. Isaac, a practical man who loved the outdoors, had a special admiration for Esau. After all, Esau was the son who brought back fresh game, who stood out with his strength and physical skills. On the other hand, Rebekah felt a deeper connection with Jacob, the introspective son who stayed close, learning and reflecting. This family dynamic makes us think about how our choices, as parents or children, can influence relationships and even shape destinies. Isaac and Rebekah's favoritism created an atmosphere of competition and comparison. And isn't that how we often feel too? When someone else gets more praise, or when we're measured against siblings, friends, or colleagues. Through this story, God reminds us of the importance of treating everyone with fairness and justice, recognizing the unique gifts He has placed in each person. Maybe today is a good time for you to reflect. Are you valuing the people around you equally and justly? The rivalry between Esau and Jacob wasn't something they created on their own. The family environment played a big role in intensifying their tension. This prompts us to think about how our actions, or even our inaction, impact those around us? Do we encourage competition more than cooperation? Whether it's in families, workplaces, or friendships, fostering unity always yields more lasting results. How about practicing that today? It could be as simple as a kind word or a gesture showing you appreciate someone's efforts. Jacob, as Rebekah's favorite, likely felt more confident in his actions, while Esau, favored by Isaac, didn't feel the need to prove himself as much. This reveals something interesting. Favoritism can both motivate and limit people. Here's a practical takeaway. Even if you feel favored or overlooked in a situation, there's always room to grow and trust God to bring balance. After all, He doesn't show favoritism. Favoritism didn't just shape Esau and Jacob's personalities, it also influenced their future choices. Jacob learned to use his intelligence to get what he wanted, while Esau, impulsive and confident in his strength, seemed to rely less on planning. This raises an important question. How does the environment we grow up in shape the decisions we make today? Maybe it's time to identify those influences and realign them with the path God has prepared for you. Rebekah and Isaac, despite their good intentions, unintentionally created an emotional divide between their sons. This is a powerful reminder for parents and leaders. Our preferences can build barriers instead of bridges. So why not take a moment to think about how you can be a unifier instead of a divider? Encourage open dialogue, practice empathy, and show that everyone holds equal value in God's eyes. But this rivalry, as we'll see next, would reach a boiling point when Jacob, with Rebekah's help, took the blessing meant for Esau. This act wouldn't just change their lives, it would also reveal the lasting impact of choices and favoritism. Get ready to dive even deeper into this story full of twists and turns. We've arrived at one of the most dramatic moments in this story. The moment Jacob, urged on by Rebekah, decides to deceive Isaac to receive the blessing that was originally meant for Esau. Picture the scene. Isaac, old and nearly blind, relies on the words and touch of who he believes to be his eldest son. It's a deeply deceptive act, but it teaches us important lessons about the crooked paths we sometimes take to achieve our goals. Does God approve when we sacrifice truth for what we want? Rebekah, always favoring Jacob, masterminded the whole plan. She knew time was running out, and that Isaac would soon grant the blessing to Esau. So she instructed Jacob to wear his brother's clothes and cover his arms with animal skins to mimic Esau's hairy texture. Sounds like something out of a movie, right? But here's the big question. How far would you go to get what you want? This story reminds us that shortcuts might deliver quick results, but they often come with painful consequences. When Jacob approached Isaac, he had to lie to keep the charade going. He claimed to be Esau, used the scent of his brother's clothes, and relied on the feel of the animal skins to convince his father. God, who always values truth, undoubtedly had bigger plans for Jacob, but that doesn't excuse the means he used. How many times in our lives do we justify small lies or deceptions, thinking we're helping God's plan along? This is where we need to pause and reflect on the importance of trusting His timing and His ways. And then, the blessing was given. Isaac, unaware of the deceit, spoke words that would seal Jacob's destiny. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness. It was a powerful blessing, guaranteeing prosperity, leadership, and divine protection. But this victory came at a steep price. When Esau discovered what had happened, his anger was so deep that he vowed revenge. This shows us that success achieved dishonestly often creates distance between us and the people we care about. The immediate consequence was Jacob's exile. Rebekah, fearing for her son's life, sent him away to avoid confrontation with Esau. From here, we see how impulsive choices can separate us from those we love. Jacob had to leave his family behind and carry the burden of his actions. This part of the story is a reminder to think about the long-term consequences of our decisions. Are the choices we're making today drawing us closer to or pushing us further from God's plans? What makes this story even richer is the complexity of the emotions involved. Rebekah, in helping Jacob, thought she was protecting her son, but she ended up creating a rift between him and his brother. Jacob, in going along with the plan, may not have fully understood the emotional cost of his actions. It's like chasing a goal at all costs, only to realize once you've achieved it, that you've lost something precious in the process. Let this story be a reminder to balance purpose with integrity. But even amid all this pain and separation, God doesn't abandon Jacob. He walks with him, shaping his character and transforming his story. And it's this same gracious God who shows us there's always room for redemption and reconciliation. In the next chapter of this journey, we'll see how time and distance prepared the way for one of the greatest lessons in forgiveness and restoration. After years of separation, the moment finally came for Jacob and Esau to meet again. Imagine the tension. Jacob, who had left home with a stolen blessing, was now a different man, more mature, shaped by a life full of ups and downs. But the fear was still there. He knew that facing Esau meant confronting his past, and he had no idea how he'd be received. This moment teaches us a lot about courage. Sometimes we have to go back and face the consequences of our choices to move forward with the purpose God has for us. Before meeting Esau, Jacob made a strategic decision. He sent gifts ahead as a way to soften his brother's heart. This gesture, while practical, also carried a deeper meaning. The desire for reconciliation needs to be backed by concrete actions. Is there someone in your life you need to forgive or ask forgiveness from? Maybe it's time to take that first step, whether it's a phone call, a text, or even a small act of kindness. When Esau finally approached, there was no sword raised, only open arms. He ran to meet Jacob and embraced him, showing a forgiveness that went beyond the past. Esau's act reminds us that forgiveness is a gift we give not only to others, but to ourselves. Holding on to grudges is like carrying an unnecessary burden, while forgiving sets us free to move forward. God calls us to forgive as He forgives us, and Esau demonstrated that in such a powerful way. The reconciliation between the brothers is a living example of how God works on our hearts over time. Esau, who once swore revenge, was now ready to let the past go, and Jacob, who had once been a deceiver, showed a transformed heart. This kind of transformation is possible for all of us when we let God shape and teach us. Have you ever asked God to change areas of your life that need transformation? Maybe now is the time. After their reunion, Esau and Jacob went their separate ways, but both left behind significant legacies. Esau became the patriarch of the Edomites, a strong and respected nation. Jacob, on the other hand, continued his journey with God, becoming Israel and fathering the 12 tribes. This shows us that, even in the midst of mistakes and conflicts, God can use our lives for something extraordinary. No matter how imperfect we are, He always has a greater purpose. The embrace between Esau and Jacob was more than just a moment of reconciliation. It was a reminder that, with God, there's always hope for restoration. Is there a relationship in your life that needs that kind of healing? Pray to God, ask for guidance, and let Him work in the hearts involved. Just as He did with these two brothers, He can turn any situation into a story of redemption. And so the journey of Esau and Jacob comes to an end, but the impact of their choices and reconciliation echoes to this day. Their story leaves us with a profound lesson. No matter how far we've strayed from God or from each other, there's always a way back, guided by love, forgiveness, and divine purpose. Now that you've heard this incredible story, here's the question. What are you going to do with it? Are you ready to start looking at your daily choices through a fresh lens? The story of Esau and Jacob shows us that seemingly small decisions can lead to massive consequences. Are you valuing what really matters? Or are you trading eternal things for fleeting pleasures just like Esau did? Take a moment to reflect on your relationship with God. Have you been giving Him room to guide your steps? Maybe it's time to seek His presence more, to invest in something that will have a lasting impact on your life. Esau's story is a wake-up call, but it's also an opportunity for transformation. God shows us that, even in the midst of our mistakes, there's always a path to redemption and reconciliation. And now, I want to hear from you. What's going to change in your life starting today? How did this story touch your heart? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you're thinking. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on more amazing stories and the lessons they bring to our lives. There's so much more incredible content here on the channel, just waiting for you. In fact, some videos are popping up on your screen right now. Click and dive even deeper into the lessons from the Bible that can transform your life. See you next time.